Okay, so I'm here to present on a brief overview of the Pilates method and a brief history of Joseph Pilates, who was born in 1883 in Germany, just outside Dusseldorf. He was born to parents his mother was a naturopath, so very much that approach of really believing in the body being able to heal itself. And his father was a gymnast, so he had those kind of early influences which helped him gain an early interest in anatomy and other exercise regimes. He was a sick child and he was bullied quite a lot. And because of this, he gained interest in self-defense and yoga. He also became a gymnast himself and, in fact, a boxer. And in fact, he actually ended up moving to the UK, to England, to further his boxing career. But then World War I broke out and he was actually interned in England with other Germans. And there isn't a lot of information around this period. We don't have a lot of detail around this time of exactly what went on, but he was interned in a camp where there were other Germans. Some were in hospital beds, injured, and there was very much at that time, it was very much thought to, the belief was very much about, staying in hospital and not moving, basically. That was the idea that would get you better. However, Joseph Pilates started really helping to rehab some of his prison mates. He also started to design almost the reformer around the hospital bed with the springs, getting people to move, getting people to start to become involved in his method, which at the time was called contrology. After the war, he returned to Germany, but he wasn't happy in Germany. He wasn't happy with the political situation. And so he went to the United States. He would have gone on a boat at the time. He would have been shipped over to the United States. And it was actually his second time going over to the US. Second time, I think he was in his 40s, maybe 43 years old. Kind of really unusual, actually, that you would be, I don't know how he had the money to do this. This was his second time going to the US. Again, we don't have much information. I don't know how he afforded these boat trips to the United States. But anyway, this was his second time. He met Clara, who he actually never married, but became his long-term companion, partner. And they then set up their first Pilates studio in New York on 8th Avenue, I think it was. And that's where he then very much further developed his contrology, which was based on 34 exercises, which were designed to be performed in a specific order, very much guided by the breath, and the idea of how you could transition from one into the next was by really lengthening your breath and really connecting to your breath, centering, etc. Kind of the principles that we use now. He wrote, I think, 2 books in his life. One was his most famous book, Return to Life, Contrology, which shows all the 34 exercises and the order. And then another book of his, Your Health. There's countless books written about Joseph Pilates, but not actually based on, he didn't write them himself, is what I'm trying to say. As previously mentioned, he invented the reformer. We talked about how that was sort of based roughly around the hospital bed. He also invented the Wonder Chair, he invented the barrel, lots of varying different sizes of the barrel. And of course the Cadillac, which has the tower, the springs attached to it. He really designed the reformer that you would transition from the reformer onto the mat. The mat was really designed as something that was meant to be harder. You were using your own body weight, and feeling the flow and the support on the reformer, I think can very much be translated onto the mat. So when you've got that sense of flow, that sense of support, which you can feel on the reformer, which I'm just getting to understand now, how you can translate that onto the mat. And also even using things like thorobands, which I'll use a lot in my classes, how those thorobands can actually mimic the springs of the reformer itself. After he Joseph Pilates set up his studio with Clara on 8th Avenue, he would open it up, he would charge people $5 to come into his very much an open gym where people would carry out the exercises in the order, and he would walk around and cue and correct, sometimes in a very, very strict, interesting manner. He actually, did I say that he actually charged people like $5 to come into the classes. At the time, it was a lot of dancers that were really interested. Then other people started learning his methodology. They became his elders. And some of those elders moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. Celebrities started gaining interest and became curious in the method. And slowly, Pilates started to grow in America. Elders previously mentioned, such as Romana, Ron Fletcher, Kathy Grant, all developed his method. And in fact, Romana herself actually took over his studio in New York. I think she relocated the studio to a different avenue, but she took over that studio in New York after his death. There was an interesting period in the early 2000s where the name Pilates was very much, or has been very much seen as a trademark as opposed to a name. And so people were, they were teaching the Pilates method, but they weren't allowed to use the name Pilates. And there was this 4-year-long court case, which I think Fletcher and I think Steele got very, very involved in, a very long, drawn-out court case, which eventually they did win, which I think was like in 2004 or something. So it's unbelievable to think, it's only really since then that people have been able to use the name Pilates to the exercises that they were teaching, the classical Pilates. And so it really, that was huge, and it really opened up doors for the whole Pilates movement. And it also opened up the door really into the UK for Pilates. Pilates had come over, obviously Joseph Pilates had been in the UK, but really Pilates started to really grow 1970s, but mainly in the 80s, people started getting really interested in Pilates in the UK. The reformer itself is a fantastic piece of equipment that I'm slowly starting to understand and like. It really challenges your core. Yes, the mat challenges your core, but of course with the varying degrees of spring tension, you can make it as hard as you like for the athlete, or you can make it perhaps easier, a little bit more gentle for someone needing a bit more support, perhaps someone that's injured or rehabbing, etc. So I think that's the beauty of the reformer, and of course it improves flexibility, strength, thereby improving posture, alignment, etc. The classical reformer is very much made to Joseph Pilates' specifications, whereas the contemporary has a more varied spring resistance. I think there's very much a place for classical and contemporary. I don't think it's one over the other. We are living in 2024. Times have changed. Our lifestyles have changed. Not always for the better, but because of that, we do need to adapt exercises accordingly. In terms of setting up the reformer, and I thought about this very much when I was setting up my own reformer, you need space. So you need space around you for a reformer, whether it be one reformer in a small room, a small studio for one client. You still need to have room to be able to safely get on and off the reformer, and perhaps for some warm-ups or some cool-downs that might be around the reformer, not directly on it. But just being mindful of having space around you and a level floor, making sure it's set up correctly, safely, i.e. checking things like the ropes, the springs, the footrest, and maintaining and replacing springs, etc. when needed, and obviously cleaning the reformer when you've finished. And that would really very much apply also to 7 or 8 reformers in a room if you're teaching group, making sure that they're not going to bump into the person next to them, that all the reformers have got plenty of safe space, etc. And perhaps in that situation, really encouraging the clients to check their reformers before they get on them as well. A bit different to when you have a one-to-one situation. The main principles of Pilates are centering, concentration, control, breath, flow, and precision. I think I've got all those right without looking. So how we'd apply those principles to the reformer, I think it's really very much how we apply those to the client, whether it be mat or reformer. It's really, rather than just going straight into the exercises, just allowing them that time to settle into the reformer, allowing them some time to center themselves, i.e. thinking about posture, thinking about alignment, thinking about connection to the pelvic floor, thinking about the position of the rib cage, the shoulders, etc. And really allowing them to connect to the breath before they start to move. That will allow, as we allow the breath to initiate the movement, that will encourage flow and precision through appropriate cueing. And all of this encompasses concentration. You need total concentration to be able to apply all of this to the Pilates exercises, and this is all encompassing of the Pilates method. Okay, I hope that's covered everything. Thank you so much for listening.